Hello, everybody. This is Vince Russo, and I am here with our newest show on the brand called Getting Color. And this is where we really look at the ins and the outs of professional wrestling, not by two fanboys, not by two Mark wannabes, but two guys that have actually been there. Two guys that have actually been there representing the big three. When I talk about big three, well, actually, I could say big four, because it was ECW, WWE, WCW, and TNA. Vito, Big Vito LaGrasso, worked for all of those companies. I worked for 3 out of the 4. We like to really get behind the scenes and talk about some topics that you really don't hear on other podcasts. So I'm joined by the Reverend Big Vito LaGrasso. Vito, would you mind explaining why you're the Reverend?
How you doing, sports fans? This is Big Vito LaGrasso from the Big Vito brand, the Pavarotti of hard shots to the body. Welcome to Getting Color. Yeah, the buzz right now is I officiated my first wedding yesterday. It was something that came about, nothing I planned, and it was a really great, thrilling feeling to know that somebody asked me to do something to enhance their lives and talk to people, two people on getting married. I found it really a true revelation. And a little story before we go any further. When I was a kid, my mother always said, if you can be one of the guys on the podium speaking to people, you will have accomplished things in life. Now, I was a great basketball player. My mom came to all the dinners. We went to, I won trophies, and the kid is a kid. But throughout all the years, when you hear your mother say that, and you think of the great things you do when you're doing public speaking or you're doing charity work, all these things, you know that you have lived your mother's dreams and became that person. My mother passed when I was 19, so she hasn't been able to enjoy any of my success, but I know looking down, she's very proud of the man I've become, and it was a great experience.
Bro, knowing you, and listen, you're a big, tough guy, Vito. I know that, and that's how everybody knows you. And listen, bro, let's be honest. You're the real deal. You look like a tough guy. You are a tough guy growing up the streets of Staten Island. But, bro, knowing you and knowing your heart, there's no way in the world you did not cry while you're marrying this beautiful, lovely couple yesterday, bro.
Vince, I hate to break your heart. I know you cry at Mob Wives because you have all these fantasies, and
Yes.
everything.
With Rita, yes.
With Rita. But I just, it wasn't about crying. It was about spreading the word and feeling good and doing the positive vibe thing. And I've been doing that for a very long time. And it was very fulfilling. I mean, yeah, breaking necks and cashing checks was one thrilling thing in my life. But then when you get to do something where you're making people happy and they're smiling and entertaining people, and the people from the sermon, they thought it was a really great thing. The word of the sermon was the word sacrifice. And in life, you have to sacrifice, not only in wrestling people and the business, but on the other side of the coin, when you have your life, your career, your family. And the thing I told people more than anything in the world is family comes first. That's the sacrifice. And as you know, Vince, being with the big three, doing your thing, your family came second. And then after you stepped out, you knew, hey, I made a messed up here. I made a mistake. Family first. Go ahead, Vince.
Well, not only that, Vito, when you talk about sacrifice, I mean, bro, come on, let's look at sacrifice when it comes to friendship, especially in the realm of professional wrestling. Vito, you don't need, listen, I think we can be honest here. You don't even need 5 fingers to count your true friends that you establish in the wrestling business. And I'm not talking about being in the wrestling business for a cup of coffee, a year or 2 years. I'm talking about, bro, you could be in the wrestling business for decades and decades and decades. But when all is said and done, and let's face it, bro, you can't do anything else for anybody anymore. How many real friends do you really have? And that's sacrifice too, bro. Friends sacrifice just as much as family does.
No, you're absolutely right. And, to talk about sacrifice and, people, me and Vince go way back and we talk about a lot of good things on the show. But Being Vince Russo's friend and never turning my back on him and always taking his back and standing behind him, it might not have been the most positive thing I've ever did in my career, but I could have gave two craps what people had to say or what they could do for me or nothing. My friendship with Vince was solid. I wasn't going to backstab him just to get places. And that's what he's talking about. We're friends 25 years and we're here doing this. The same thing we started doing is the same thing we're finishing doing. We're doing a podcast and a radio show to enjoy ourselves and have a good time.
And that's exactly it, bro. You talk about going full circle, but to me, this is a full circle in the right way. Because Vito, I say, bro, all the time, bro. Even before you and I, got together again recently, but we never stopped talking. But bro, I always used to tell people the most fun I had in the wrestling business was a little studio in West Babylon, Long Island. Go, bro. Fast forward now, 26 years, whatever the heck it is, and here we are. Two guys, two paisans, two friends having an honest conversation, no BSing, no backstabbing. And you know what? This is where the joy really comes in.
No, you're 100% correct. And for the people out there, I hope you get a good listen because this is the truth. We're not lying to you.
Yeah. And we're going to look at a time in professional wrestling today. And I'm going to narrow that time down to kind of like 96 to 99, 97 to 99, when the wrestling business was cooking on all four burners. And I'm talking about ECW, WWE, WCW. Vito was right smack in the middle at ECW at that time. I was right there in the action at WWE. We both slid over to WCW, so we really have an insight as to what was going on during that time in wrestling, 96 to 99. It will never be repeated. I'm sorry, bro. There will never be a boom like that with three companies like that again. We're going to go into that. We're going to talk a lot about that. But let me tell you first, I tell you guys every week, it is very important to support my sponsors. Because of the sponsors is why we're able to do this show. It costs money to do a podcast, and if we don't have great sponsors sponsoring our show, we can't do this. So I want to tell you a little bit about Pro Wrestling Loot. Pro Wrestling Loot is a monthly pro wrestling mystery box that comes to you monthly, filled with wrestling merchandise. This mystery box comes packed with autographed photos, action figures, t-shirts, and exclusive collectibles you won't find anywhere else. Sign up now at ProWrestlingLoot.com for just $19.99 monthly with no commitments. You could try it for a month and see if you like it. There's no long-term commitment. And for all of you first-time subscribers that sign up now, you will save 10% off your first month's box by using the promo code Russo. So if you go to ProWrestlingLoot.com, it'll be $17.99 for the first box if you use the promo code Russo. If you want the hottest wrestling items spanning through all eras of wrestling, my favorite, as you know, being the Attitude Era, the early days of WrestleMania, you could just go to ProWrestlingLoot.com. From legends and Hall of Famers to the biggest indie stars, and even Vince Russo, was included in a Pro Wrestling Loot mystery box. So head on over now to ProWrestlingLoot.com and remember, save 10% off your first box by using the promo code Russo. Again, that's ProWrestlingLoot.com. The Twitter account is @WrestlingLoot. All right, Vito, I want to start with ECW.
Okay.
Because there's a couple of things about ECW I wanna get out there first, because a lot of people like to believe what they want to believe. You know, that's kind of how like a lot of these journalists / marks are with professional wrestling. They've got their own history and their own ideas of how things took place. And no matter what, how many times I try to set the record straight, I always hear the same story over and over and over again. And one of the stories I always hear that I want to set the record straight once again is I always hear people say, and as a matter of fact, I think Bruce Pritchard said it on his podcast the other day, that my Attitude Era writing was influenced by ECW. And Vito, I want to set the story straight, because that is not true. And that is not a slight at ECW. Listen, I give credit where credit is due. That's not a slight at ECW, but they were not an inspiration to me, because listen, when ECW was on CMT, that's where they started, the country music television, their ratings weren't even a 1. For everybody thinks that ECW was, like global. No, bro, their ratings, I remember it was Friday night, the ratings were like a 0.8, 0.9, a 1.0 at best. Literally, I watched fractions of maybe 3 to 5 ECW shows. That's it. I never bought an ECW pay-per-view. I never went to an ECW show. And they were not an influence on me when I wrote for the Attitude Era. An influence on me was the NWO. When Hogan and Scott Hall and Kevin Nash got together, and I wasn't quite writing yet for the WWE, I was watching that product and saying, holy crap, that's what we need to be doing. That was my influence. And like I said, I'm not saying that as a slight against ECW. I'm just stating it as a fact. Now, Vito, there were 2 things to me that really stood out when I watched ECW for maybe a handful of times. There were 2 things that really stood out, and I want to discuss one especially with you.
Okay.
First of all, I didn't watch it long enough to really get into any storylines. Like, I didn't know any of the storylines that were going on. I didn't watch it that long enough. But when I turned it on, and in those spots where I turned it on, what I did really like was I liked the characters. I love the Dudleys. I love back in the day when Bubba was stuttering, and him and Devon were brothers with the masking tape on the glasses. I love that. I love the Dudley boys. I thought Sandman had a cool character. I always thought Raven was cool. But believe it or not, honestly, I wasn't like a big Taz guy. I wasn't like a big Dreamer guy. I loved what Al Snow was doing over there, with the head. So, like, I like some of the characters. Here was the second thing, Vito, I walked away with when I watched ECW. And this is where, like, there's a part of me that gives Paul Heyman credit, and there's another part of me that I have a little insight into how Paul Heyman conducted business back then that I'm not a fan of. But the other thing that drew me besides the characters were I used to watch this show, Vito, every Friday night.
Right.
And people used to refer to Paul Heyman, oh, he's a genius, he's this, he's that, whatever. When I think of Paul Heyman being a genius, this is what I look at, bro. I used to turn on a product, Vito, where I would see you guys actually freaking killing yourself. I mean, every time I would watch ECW, I thought, this is the show I'm going to see somebody break their neck, or this is the show somebody's going to. The guys were physically freaking killing themselves. And my view of Paul Heyman used to be, what is this guy doing? What is this guy saying to make these guys sometimes recklessly put their bodies on the line the way they're doing, jumping over balconies, hitting each other over their head with the fluorescent light bulbs? How the hell is this guy convincing grown men to perform this way in a ring? So that's the first question I want to ask you, Vito. That work ethic, to me, that work ethic was really beyond strong style, because it was dangerous, bro. Some of the stuff you guys were doing, I had never seen before, and it was really, really dangerous. Talk to me about performing some of those matches during that time with the weapons and the danger and just an uncontrollable crowd and atmosphere. Was that Paul Heyman supplying the motivation, or was that just the guys and the gals on the roster?
Okay. You gave me a lot of facts and you gave me a lot of questions in the one first question. The first thing I'm going to answer for you is, for all the people who thought, like Bruce Pritchard, thought that ECW was the influence for Vince Russo. Now, you got to take that statement and you got to say, how could that be? Because you had Vince Russo riding for the #1 company in the world, working side by side with Vince McMahon. Okay? So if you're working next to Vince McMahon, who most consider a genius, he was the man. So wouldn't your influence be to work with that person? Your competition would be the NWO, which Vince said is correct. Okay, because now you're running 1 and 2. You're running WWE, the Attitude Era, against the NWO. Now it's a ratings game of who could be better and who could be more creative than the other. All right. Now you come to ECW. Now you have the WWE Attitude Era, you have the NWO, you have the biggest stars, and here we have this little company called ECW, Extreme Championship Wrestling. It was a different look at wrestling at the time. It was something that wasn't done. It was innovative. It wasn't too so much it was dangerous, because back then nobody was educated enough to know about dangers and head injuries and back injury. Nobody was that informative. What everybody had in ECW was a passion to beat the WWE, to beat the NWO. When you had those three companies going, you actually had people like you. Now, ECW was a cult following. They had their group of people. We sold out almost every house show, people. Whether if it was standing room 2,000, we got 2,000. If it was standing room 500, we got 500. We always had a full house. Now, the ECW brand and the ECW way of doing things was that you had to work hard and be creative. Paul Heyman gave you the freedom to do these things. Yes, there was a bunch of minds behind there. You had Tommy Dreamer, you had Taz, you had the Dudleys. It wasn't a one-man show. It was a conglomerate of guys wanting to work to be the best and put a product out there that hasn't been seen before. Now, if you look at the talent that came through that place, everybody made it to the WWE, all the top guys. So if you look at the top talent that came through, Paul Heyman made what Vince Russo was talking about he liked the most, characters. And where did the Dudleys go with the characters? To the WWE. Where did Taz go with his character? To the WWE. Where did Vito the Skull LaGrasso go to? He went to be Big Vito in WCW. You had Lance Storm who followed. You had Mike Awesome who followed. You had a bunch of other guys who followed, you know. And for the guys who stayed behind and stayed to the end, those guys kept up the work regimen and the creativeness to make it one of the best organizations that you will be part of. If you were never part of ECW, you never know what it was like. And in my years, in my time, that was probably the closest knit locker room that you will ever have. Paul, as far as being creative, Paul was a motivator. He motivated you to be good. He motivated you to do these things. He's a great motivationalist. He created that environment where everybody was enthusiastic. Were their paychecks late? I don't know. I could tell you from Vito LaGrasso, I got paid. I got paid every week. My check was there. He owed me no money. I have no issues. So, I mean, as far as being given opportunity by Paul Heyman, I had an attitude problem. I thought I was better. I was too good for my own good. I was better than the guys who were all coming through. And then when I had to restart myself and say, okay, I need to have an attitude check. I need to eat some humble pie. If I didn't go to Paul Heyman and Taz to teach me how to do that, I would never have enhanced my career to make it as far as I did and teach me the wrestling business. It wasn't skill that I lacked. They all knew where I came from. They all knew I could wrestle. But the one thing they did there is they made you part of a team. They made you part of a product. And if you could be part of the product, you were going to be successful. A lot of guys got their start there. It was a great combination of guys. You look at Sabu, Rob Van Dam, Jerry Lynn, all top-notch guys. It was one of the greatest assembly of talent when you look back. So you had the characters, you had the high flyers, you had the hard workers, you had the technicians, you had the hardcore guys like New Jack, Balls and Axel, the Baldies, one of the great rivalries in ECW. Yes, did it look hard? Did it look dangerous? Everything looks like that. You try to take care of each other, but there are some times when things happen where you try to protect your guy, because back then in the 90s, you took care of each other as best you could. You had to work tight. You had to do everything possible to protect the guy because you knew you were coming back the other night. And being that ECW clique, if you look back, there weren't really too many injuries. We were all tough. We all did tough things. It was a great environment. So with the Attitude Era and the creativeness of Vince Russo, Eric Bischoff with the NWO and WCW, Paul Heyman and his creativeness and his being a motivator in ECW, you had a clash of great talent going head to head to head. Was ECW on the map to being something on the way to maybe being number two? Yeah, I'd say if the guys would have stayed, definitely. But when you're getting the chance to make money in the wrestling business, big money, the money that you dream of, to be on the big stage like that, it's not that you're leaving, because I had the opportunity, and Vince Russo could tell you, called me, he offered me a job. But the thing was, I went to Paul and I said, Paul, I have an opportunity. I made my niche here. I don't really want to leave. And he told me, he said, Vito, you've been working all these years. You need to go. I said, okay. You know, he made me, he was like, my conscience was I finally got to be somebody in ECW. And then when I had the job in ECW, I got a phone call from Howard Finkel. Hey, listen, we have a job for you. I was like, Howard, and I know Howard Finkel, I love that man to death. He's always good to me and my family. And I said, Howard, I finally got a job in ECW, and now you want to give me a job in the WWE. I said, but when I didn't have anything, you didn't want me, but now I have something, and you want to take it away from me. He says, no, I want you to come down. I said, Howard, I'm going to pass. I'm going to stick with what I'm doing. And I think I made the best decision ever.
You know what, though, Vito? That's where I had some heat with Paul Heyman, because you were, you were a player over there, but I wouldn't consider you one of his top guys.
No,
and basically what happened with me, where it really made me lose respect for Paul Heyman. Even though I still, bro, I don't know. I can't say I personally know Paul Heyman well. I don't, bro. We've had a couple of conversations on the phone, but I don't know him well enough. But what happened was, when I was writing with Vince, at one TV at his house or something, he said to me, he said, Vince, this is when ECW is running. I made an arrangement with Paul Heyman that if he wants to use one of our guys, that maybe isn't, getting enough TV time and needs some exposure stuff, we're going to send him to ECW. And if we want some of their guys, he's going to, send them over to WWE. And I said, that's great, Vince. Now, I knew Vince did not watch the product. Okay, so I watched ECW. Like I said, bro, I watched maybe five five, 8 shows, and I'm pushing it with 8. And I would go to Vince and say, Vince, let's bring this guy in from ECW. You know, and I remember vividly, like the first one was the Dudleys. Let's bring the Dudleys in. I like their gimmick. I like what they're doing, the stutter and this whole 9 yards. Well, Vince went to Paul and said, okay, Paul, we're interested in bringing the Dudleys over. Vince didn't know anything about Vince did not watch ECW, bro. He knew nothing about the product. Well, Paul turned around and told Vince, well, Vince, you know, I spoke to those guys and they're not interested in coming over to the WWE. Now, bro, I knew right then and there. Bro, if you're working for ECW and you're not interested in coming to WWE, something is freaking wrong. Because that's the whole idea. You know, you're going to make X amount of dollars at ECW. You're going to make a hell of a lot more at WWE, and it was all about the money. And I told Vince right then and there, I said, Vince, that's BS, bro. Those guys want to come here. Paul does not want to send those guys here. And sure enough, bro, a couple of weeks later, I get a call directly from the Dudleys, who were more than interested in coming to the WWE, and I set up a meeting with them and Vince. That happened with a couple of other guys, bro, where, you know, Taz wasn't interested in coming. Next thing I know, Taz is calling me on the phone. Al Snow's not interested in coming. Next thing I know, Al's getting in touch with me. So that just bothered me that Paul made an arrangement with Vince McMahon, and not so much that he didn't live up to the arrangement for Vince and the WWE, but the fact that these guys had the opportunity to go to the WWE where there was going to be more money and there was going to be more job security, and he kept them back there saying they didn't want to go. Now, I can't say, bro, if I was in Paul's shoes, maybe I wouldn't have done the same thing. Maybe I would have done the same thing. But it just really bothered me that these guys had an opportunity to make more money, and Paul kind of kept them back saying they didn't want to go to the WWE. That's one of the things that really soured me on Paul Heyman back in those days.
Well, you know, it's not like anything else. It's like you always want to protect your best players, and Paul was protecting his best player. Those were the money guys. Those were the guys who were the top guys. Those were the top draws. And, you know, it's a business, like you know, and it's politics and business, and you can have an agreement one day. Next day you come back, it's a different agreement, and with additives and kicks, you know. Hey, listen, I heard that Paul Heyman had a contract with Vince, and I heard a bunch of things. I'm not going to rehash it here on the show because that's not what we do. But you hear things and you just say, you shake your head and you say, okay. You find out years later, it might be true. It might not be true. You don't know because you're not Paul Heyman and you're not Vince McMahon. So you just take it as it comes. But as far as being what you said, an innovator, a motivator, yes. Did he produce characters that you wanted? Yes. Playing the game of saying my guys are not interested, that's a cat and mouse game that you and I know about, and I'm sure the wrestling families, wrestling world and the family of wrestling know about too.
Vito, let me ask you about this, and I'm asking you like literally, like, you know, I'm asking you this as a fan, because I'm interested. Bro, listen, in the WWE and WCW, bro, I was around enough the prescription medication and, you know, guys taking too much Percocet and Xanax and, you know, all the, I was around that, bro. I saw that. It helped a lot of the guys, you know, get through. Okay. I mean, and, you know, I didn't agree with it. A lot of the guys felt like they didn't have a choice with the schedules they had. I got it. I understood it. But you never saw like illegal drugs. Like you never saw like, you know, cocaine and, you know, I mean, marijuana is a lot less, but you never saw alcohol. You never saw, you know, drugs. You never saw, you know, pills. You weren't going to see that in the WWE locker room, and you were not going to see that in a Turner locker room. You were going to see the prescription medication that you were going to see, but you weren't going to see third-party drugs and alcohol, syringes. You know, bro, later on in the WCW locker room, there was a syringe involved with somebody that came over from ECW. What was that locker room like? Because, bro, I can't, like, I have to believe you've been in WCW locker rooms, you've been in WWE locker rooms. I gotta believe, bro, the boys were probably able to get away with a hell of a lot more than they would have been able to get away with in WWE, WCW. Was that the case? Was it rampant? Did it hurt the company? Who was the policeman? Can you give me a little insight into that, bro?
Well, in all of the locker rooms, okay, there's always going to be the, you know, the drug issue, you know, whether it's WWE, WCW, ECW. Being the WWE was a bigger company, they had a bigger police force to clean up their act. In WCW, it was the second tier, so they had the money to administer the drugs and, I mean, the tests for whatever, you know, what was going on. ECW, okay? Now you're talking about a company that didn't have the financials to do the testing like the other two companies. And basically, you knew what was going on, and everybody policed themselves. So when you police yourselves, you take care of your brother. And I can tell you on this show, I've done it in the 3 companies. Hey, man, give me your key. Listen, let me get you in your room. I'll come get you tomorrow. Hey, man, why don't you go in your hotel room, do your business. I'll come knock on your door tomorrow. To say it was done more in ECW than WWE and WCW, I can't say that because I'm not a judge. Was there that kind of etiquette going around? Yes. Did we try to police each other as the boys? You're going in the 90s now, and the wrestling business was different. When it came to that kind of stuff, we all kind of stuck together and we all tried to police each other up. Nobody wanted to lose their jobs or have your buddy get popped for something. So what you did was you did your own wrestler cleanup. If you saw a guy down, you didn't advertise. You picked him up, you put him in your hotel room, you let him sleep it off. If you seen him fumbling around, you picked him up. There were guys in WCW who stumbled around, I helped. There were guys in WWE, I helped. There were guys in ECW, I helped. Everybody has those problems. Whether it was greater in other places, it could be. But the way your manpower was, you policed your own guys, and the ECW guys policed themselves because we were a little bit tighter. Maybe we didn't have the elaborate, sugar coatings as the WWE and WCW, but we did the best we could to protect our guys. So it was more or less a brother versus brother, you know.
Vito, one thing I want to talk about when I was, again, the difference in the 3 companies, what was going on at that point in history from 96 to 99, you can go as far as 2000, but, WCW was pretty much done by then. When I started writing at the WWE, I started writing before the Attitude Era, and I started writing when, the NWO, was literally kicking the ass of the WWE. People, I don't know if they realize this or they don't want to realize this. Financially, WWE was in the red at the time. WCW was signing away guy after guy after guy, Hogan and Hennig and Savage and Piper and Rude, and the list goes on and on and on. They had the money. They were taking all off freaking guys. At that time, the creative was freaking horrible at the WWE. I talked about it numerous times. So I started writing at a time when the WCW was kicking our ass. Right. Me and Vince worked very closely together. We looked at the ratings every week together. We believed in what we were doing, and we stayed the course. And I can remember every time, man, we would be writing creatively, the ratings would come in from that Monday night, and they would always be like hovering around 3.0. And I remember Vince would turn to me and I turned to Vince, and we'd say, man, we worked damn hard for those threes. And we were working damn hard for those threes, but we kept the consistency because we believed in what we were doing, and we knew it was only a matter of time. The atmosphere in the locker room, Vito, like this is unheard of in wrestling. I don't know how the locker room is in the WWE today. I'm not there. But at that time in the WWE, we were clearly the underdog. WCW was kicking our ass. And bro, I can tell you in that locker room, bro, I don't care who you were on the card, came together as a family because we really wanted to take it back. We wanted to take back what was ours. Everybody collectively in that locker room, it was the closest to a major league team that I had ever experienced. And here's why, bro. Here is the key freaking why. All of the guys on top at the time did not have freaking egos. Austin was one of the guys. Taker was one of the guys. Rock was one of the guys. At that time, you know, there were problems with Shawn Michaels. Shawn will be the first to tell you he was under the influence of some things he shouldn't have been under the influence of. So there was a reason for it. But the top guys had no freaking ego. I mean, Austin, you know, Austin acted like, you know, Savio Vega, who he was in one of his first programs with, were equal. That's how he treated everybody, like an eagle. Even as Rock was rising, he never freaking changed. Undertaker, silent, carry a big stick. Nobody had an ego. Nobody dressed alone, bro. Everybody talked to everybody else, and it was really a family-like environment. Okay? Now, bro, the very first day I set foot in a WCW locker room, it was after the war had completely flip-flopped. And now WWE was kicking the ass of WCW, and we had just shot by them. So now my whole thing was, you know, first of all, I didn't like a comment Vince made about my family. I felt I did all I could do with WWE, and I was looking for a challenge, and WCW was that challenge at the time. It had nothing to do with money. It had to do with they were on the bottom again. There was something to build up, and that's what I like to do. But Vito, I walked in a locker room that was literally on the other freaking universe of a WWE locker room. You knew who the stars were, because not only did the stars have their own locker rooms, not only were the stars making buku more money than everybody else, but the big stars didn't even want to associate with who they considered mid-carders. So you had all these guys on top dressing all by themselves, and then you had the rest of the locker room, literally mid-carders at the time, only mid-carders, because the top guys were keeping their thumb on them. They were never allowed to break through that glass ceiling. And when I stepped into WCW, I had never seen anything like that before, because that's not how the WWE locker room was. Now, you went from ECW to a WCW locker room right around the same time, because I brought you in there. Tell me what some of your experiences were. What were some of the things you first saw?
In the WCW locker room, you see, for me, it was a little different because, like, I already went through the WWE. You know, I started in the WWF. And you talk about this locker room era. Now, when I broke in '91, what you just explained about everybody dressing separately, Hogan, Warrior, Bret Hart, everybody, they all had their own locker rooms from 91 to, I'd say, about 94, 95. Maybe that's when it started to change, when you started to write and you saw a difference. In WCW, when I came over, people already had known me, and I've been in the business, so it wasn't hard for me to break bread. The first guy when I walked into the arena in Denver, Colorado, first guy I introduced myself was to Sting. I said, "Hi, I'm Vito LaGrasse." He says, "Hi, I'm Sting. Nice to meet you." So right there, that was a deal breaker. When I made my way through the dressing room, there were guys I was in the business with already, and they had known me. "Hey, Vito, congratulations. Good to see you." I wasn't a threat to nobody, so nobody took it as I was coming to take the top guy's job. But they accepted me for me and my work. So from Nash to Flair to Luger to all the guys, the top guys there, Goldberg, they just said, I could tell you about card games where it was Sting, Goldberg, Steiner, and myself, and me and Sting would just instigate in some card games just to make them get mad, and we'd laugh. The big card games you used to have going on with Nash and all the guys in there started by Vito LaGrasso because we all used to play Beal. I lost in a Beal tournament when we were in Australia, and I got everybody's shirts, 22 shirts, 22 sizes. I brought them to the next TV, and I paid my debt, and everybody thought it was the greatest thing. And even I remember Kevin Nash, he goes, "You didn't get me a shirt, bro? What the hell?" I said, "Here it is, 3X." And it wasn't as bad as that as far as camaraderie. Maybe it was that bad from what I saw as far as individuality on who's finished and what position they held in the company and what they were doing on the card. Yes, I saw that. But as far as the stuff that went through with the boys still acted okay and we still interacted with each other. Yeah, okay, when you got a guy trying to break in and trying to break through the ranks, it happens. Case in point, the day that when we did the hardcore stuff in WCW, and I came to you and I said, "Vince, I can't do the WCW title. It's not going to be legit unless I wrestle Funk." You remember that? And I said to you,
so, yeah.
And I said to you, I said, "Vince, I have to go with Funk for me to be legitimate." That night, Terry Funk did me the favor, put me over in the middle. Do you know what the dressing room did in the bar that night? Mean Gene Okerlund, Flair, and everybody, Legion of Doom, who was in that bar. Mean Gene saluted me and said, "Vito, I would like to congratulate you." He said, "Tonight was your coming out party." And everybody in that bar raised their glass. It was a packed house. I arrived because somebody played with me, somebody made me. So to make a guy like Terry Funk made me that night, made me legitimate, made me one of the boys, like the top guys in a company. I always appreciated that. And you could say Kevin Nash, when I wrestled Kevin Nash on Nitro, and I had a great match with him. How many guys suplex Kevin Nash at 7 feet tall? How many guys how many guys kick out of all 7 of Kevin Nash's finishes? He played ball with me. I was respected because of my work. They respected your work. They respected you. If they didn't think your work was good enough, they didn't let you play in the ballpark. And that's the one thing I could say about WCW that I appreciate today is that those guys respected my work. And no matter if I was in there with Steiner, with Sting, Luger, Hogan, Flair, they all played ball with me because they remembered where I came from and what I did to get there. So maybe the individuality that you talk about of everybody being separate, yes, it was. But when it came to those guys playing ball with me and some of the other guys, they played ball. So, maybe you got a different look at it because you were the head guy, you were the boss, and it was more of a boss worker,
Yeah,
kind of
definitely.
relationship. So that's where you
Vito,
get.
when you went over to WCW, bro, you had a legitimate contract, correct? You were
Yes.
no longer a independent contractor, were you?
Nope. I had a legitimate contract.
Vito, let me ask you this question hypothetically. because I ran into that too. By the time I had got there under the Bischoff regime, a lot of guys already had guaranteed contracts. And a lot of times, like, they used that if they didn't feel like working, if they didn't feel like doing a job, they had contracts. There were no longer, independent contractors. So let me ask you this. Both of them, there's a downside to both. When you have a guaranteed contract, you're guaranteed that money. So you may be a little lackadaisical. You may be a little more lazier. You may walk through matches, maybe not give your all, or I don't want to work with this guy. I don't want to work with that guy. Nothing to worry about because you had a contract. So you dealt with that a lot. But on the other side of the coin, when you're dealing with independent contracts, and now it's every man for themselves and everybody's jockeying for that spot, I notice that's when you get a lot of politics, you get a lot of the backstabbing, you get a lot of the, talking behind everybody else's back in the locker room because everybody is trying to get the spot. What do you think is the worst scenario? Working with a bunch of contracted wrestlers, who kind of hold the cards of what they want to do and what they don't want to do, or owning these guys as independent contractors where they basically have to step all over each other and get in favor with the office to get ahead?
Well, basically, the NWO was the place to be, and a lot of guys who you had the problems with, were the guys from the NWO because that's where the politicians really came from. Now, I will tell everybody here, and I want to thank J.J. Dillon because he did me the greatest favor of all when he gave me that contract. Not too many people know, or some know, I was a bonus baby. And what I mean by that, I said to him, Mr. Dillon, I said, I know you give me a contract. I says, and I never worked out a great contract like this in my life. I was raw. I'm from Staten Island. The only contracts I knew of were street contracts, but nothing in the business like I'm dealing with $1 million company. So I said, listen, I want to get on everything. I want to work all the shows. I don't want to take any time off. I said, is there any incentives you can give me? He says, yes. He says, I'm going to put in a bonus contract. I'm going to give you a bonus clause in your contract. The more money you work after your guarantee, you will get X amount of dollars to work. And I was like, you're really going to do that for me? And he says, yes, I'm going to do that for you. He says, I know you. He says, I've known your work. He says, I know you from WWF. He says, you earned it. He says, what do you think? I said, Mr. Dillon, I greatly appreciate it, and I won't let you down. I worked every show 5 and 6 days a week. My guarantee was met. I was the bonus baby. I had bonus money after 100 appearances I made. So you're talking after 100 appearances, I wrestled 250 times that year. You do the X's and O's, people. I earned my money. Some guys get complacent when they're making the big money that they don't want to work. And some guys are hungry workers like myself who drive to be the best and drive to want that strive and to get to the next stratosphere. You can't inbred that in anybody. You can't put that in anybody. It's either you got it or you don't. And if you get comfortable in your zone because you're making $1 million, how about going for $2 million? Because you know what? That $1 million you just made, it'll be spent in a day. But if you have that bonus money come in, you could spend that $1 million and you always have something to fall back on.
Yeah. Well, listen, Vito, there's a lot more I want to talk about on this topic. I want to talk about, basically, you were there, for WCW, the beginning of the end. I got the job. I brought you in. 3 months later, I was home and, you were still there. And that's when, decisions were starting to be made from a top level of management, and I'm talking about Turner. I'm not talking about WCW. And
Right.
it was kind of the beginning of the end. I want you to walk me through that. I want to talk about that, but I want to talk about that in detail. I'm going to keep the audience wanting more. I know you're on vacation, bro, with your lovely family. I don't want this can go on for another 2 hours, and I'm going to let it go on, but I want to pick this up next week. I want to hear a little bit about that. You know, when Vince Russo was in the locker room, then all of a sudden Vince isn't there, and Benoit and Guerrero and Malenko, all those guys were leaving. Like, I never really talked to anybody about that because I wasn't there for any of that. You know, then there was a time, there was 3 months I wasn't there. Sullivan was writing. Then I came back. I want to really hear about your perspective because that was really the beginning of the end for WCW. But I want to pick that up right here next week. Are you cool with that?
I think that people would like to hear it, and you're going to get the truth from me because you know what? You're getting Vince's side, but then you're getting a locker room guy's side, and not Vince's friend. You're getting somebody who lived through it, and he saw the different chains of command, and we'll leave that for next week because I think you guys would really be interested to listen to it.
Yeah, I think it'll be great in the next week. I think this has been great so far. So we got a lot more to talk about. Now, Vito, I know you're doing heavy social media, getting your name out there, getting back in the wrestling business, and it's about time because the wrestling business needs big Vito LoGrasso. Tell everybody out there about how they – I know you got Facebook going, YouTube, Twitter. I know there's an address where people can book you for seminars. Give us all that information.
All right, so this is going to be the new hashtag, people. Hashtag the Big Vito Revival, okay? We're going to start out with the Big Vito brand on YouTube. Please subscribe. Go to Twitter at the Big Vito brand. I have a Facebook page at the Big Vito brand. Okay, Instagram at the Big Vito brand. Big Vito is now doing seminars. He's doing autograph signings. He will manage. He will ref. He will come to your hometown. He will even officiate your wedding because that is a great thing to do. If you'd like to inbox me on Facebook, that'd be great. I have an email address. That's bigvito@bigvito.com. That's bigvito@bigvito.com. And remember, Getting Color, the #1 show that's been getting a lot of steam on the internet, in all the dirt sheets. Everybody's raving about it because it's a different concept. You want the truth or you want me to lie to you. Vince Russo and Vito LoGrasso coming to you live, baby, live.
All right, Vito, I'm going to let you unplug and go spend time with your family. I got to do a little housekeeping. There's a couple of things I'm going to talk about separately, but I'm going to let you go. Thanks for joining us today, my friend.
Take care, everybody.
All right, Big Vito, everybody. And I'm going to see if Vito can join us for another show this week. I'm going to get together with Vito. I'm thinking of bringing Vito on, castrating the marks. I'll let you know how that goes. Listen, I want to tell everybody about there's a new Podcast One app. Find out everything about your favorite shows and get more content for my show. Find articles, social media episodes, make playlists. I've been going on there and talking to you about all my shows. It's easy to comment and connect with other show fans. We have our own little brand community on there. Share your favorite content, see behind the scenes photo, get 360 video, or watch a bunch of shows in virtual reality. There's over 1,000 videos on there right now. It's like you're in the studio. There's no other podcast app like this. Download the all new Podcast One app now in the App Store or go on Google Play. Podcast One app. Check it out. All right, everybody. I'm going to be back tomorrow with another episode of That's Life, bro. I've gotten so many questions and so much feedback from about my That's Life episode. It's the one day of the week we get away from wrestling, and quite frankly, we really talk about things that are important. And I'm talking about freaking life and how we go through life every day and how we conduct ourselves and what we should be doing with our time here on this earth. I've got so many questions from so many of the listeners. I mean, tweets and text and emails and everything. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. I really hope you join in, guys. Listen, wrestling is fun, but wrestling is a hobby, bro. Wrestling is a form of entertainment. Wrestling is not a way of life. A way of life is the way you conduct yourself on a daily basis, how you treat those around you. And I'm not just talking about family and friends. I'm talking about strangers. What are your beliefs? Where is your place on this planet? Where do I fit in? These are all the things we talk about, and I promise you, you know how many times I've heard from people, Vince, I'll be honest with you, I never listened to that show because you didn't talk about wrestling, but I listened last week, and I'm going to be listening from here on in. Of course you're going to be listening because I'm going to give you life advice that's going to help you, and God knows we all need help. So everybody, please tune in tomorrow. That's life. Same bad time, same bad channel. Thank you, Vito LaGrasso. Support my sponsors, please, bro. See everybody tomorrow. Have a great day.